Our spine setup is just about complete. We now need to set up the twisting, and that's what we're going to work on in this lesson. So we'll need to get an idea of how we want this twist to work before we get right in and start to build it. For the hip, we want that high IK solver that we connected to it to twist totally with the hip control. And then we want this gradual twist as we move up the chain as that hip control twist. And then we want the same thing going down the spine as the chest control twist. So we're actually going to use an expression controller for this, and we'll basically be averaging between the twisting of our chest and hip controls and plugging that right into these IK goal swivel angles. So let's go ahead and get started here. And we'll start with the hip. Again, we want its rotation to be fully controlled, or its twisting to be fully controlled by our hip control. So to do this, we first select our IK goal and head over to the motion panel, open up the assign controller's rollout, choose the swivel angle, and from there we will assign a float expression controller. Alright, so from here we can create a variable. Can simply call this hip CTRL. For hip control, we'll choose create. And then of course the hip control will need to be plugged into this variable. So I'll select that. I'll go to assign to controller. We'll expand objects. Expand the COG. Okay, the first plus, not the second one. And here's the hip control. So now we can expand that. The second plus. Open up the transform controller. Rotation, Euler, XYZ. And here is our x-axis. So we'll choose OK. I would like to also mention this. If we were to, after this is done, refreeze these controls, we'll need to do this process again. Because when we do that, of course, our axis order resets. That means that Max is not going to know what axis to look at when we plug in this twist. So we'll need to, again, redo this process if we were to refreeze our control objects. Alright, so now that we have that plugged in, we can simply type in hip control into our expression. Now we debug. Of course, nothing's going to happen. Everything's fine. We can evaluate, and here's what we end up with. If I were to close this out, select the hip control and start to rotate this in the x-axis, there is the twisting. Alright, great. So this is coming along well. We don't have to worry about the top bone for the chest. Remember, we linked that directly. If we at all were ever using an IK goal for that, of course we do the same thing for the chest. So being that we don't have to worry about the chest, the next thing we move on to is establishing our mid twist. And from there, that drives the other bones. So the mid twist is going to be averaged between the chest twist and the hip twist. Let's select our IK goal for the mid twist. Okay, that's SPC. We head over back to the swivel angle and assign another float expression. Alright, so now we need to create two variables, one for the chest, one for the hip. So the first is going to be chest CTRL. Choose create. The next is hip CTRL. Choose create. Alright, so now we can go ahead and assign these. We can start with the hip. Remember, Max remembers what we've already assigned, kind of saving us time, so we'll just go ahead and choose the X for the hip and choose OK. Going to the chest, what we need to do here is just collapse the hip, expand the chest, and get to that rotate X. Again, under our 0 Euler XYZ. There we have it. So the averaging will work as follows. We first want to create parentheses. Within the parentheses, we'll type in chest CTRL plus hip CTRL. So what that means is that the rotation X of the chest and hip are going to drive the twisting of that IK goal swivel angle. But we don't want it to be controlled fully. Again, we want a halfway effect in its twist. So we simply average the two. After we add them together, out of the parentheses, we put divided by 2. If we were working with more objects, okay, we'd say chest plus hip plus that extra object and divide, of course, by 3 if we're working with 3 objects. All right, so now that that's done, we can debug, no problems, evaluate, and let's see what we get. For to close this out, start to move that chest control, notice that mid twist is going to twist exactly the way we need it to, halfway. If we were to go to that hip control and start to rotate it, again the same thing. Okay, great. So I'm just going to go ahead and set the transforms back to 0 on these. And now again, this mid twist is going to, in a way, drive the bone directly above it and directly underneath it. So let's go ahead and work on the bone directly above it. With the IK goal selected, again, swivel angle, and we'll apply the float expression. All right, so here, we're going to tie in our chest control and also the twisting of our mid bone. So we'll first create the variable for the chest control. That's going to be chest CTRL, create. And now for the mid twist, I like to call this mid SWV for swivel, abbreviated. So mid swiv. And we can go ahead and create that. Go into the chest control, we'll go to assign controllers and find its rotation X. Choose OK. Now for the mid swiv, of course, we need to look at the IK goal. So let's choose that, assign a controller. We'll go ahead and find it, which is it should be right underneath the COG's point helper. So we'll go ahead and find that object. There it is. We'll expand that. From there we'll find our high IK solver. Open that up. Open up the transform list and choose the swivel angle. Okay, so that's high IK SPC01. We'll choose OK. And again, we can work on our average. So again, we put in open and close parentheses. Within, we type in chest CTRL plus the mid twist swivel angle, or mid SWV. Coming out of this, we divide by 2. If we didn't put this in parentheses, let's say we excluded the parentheses, and we put in this divided by 2, well, Max is actually going to divide our mid swiv by 2 and not the entire thing. That's why we need to concatenate our twist parameters. All right, so now that that's done, we can go ahead and choose evaluate and check it out. As we rotate now our chest control, notice the next bone is going to rotate exactly the way we need it to. Great. All right, it looks like the chest is not twisting, the chest bone. I've linked that actually to the center of gravity helper, so I'm just going to go ahead and relink that back to the chest control. All right, there we have it. So now as we rotate this, we get a better idea of what's happening. Wonderful. So there's that twist we're getting. There's that twist we need. All right, so the last bone we have to work on is the one that is averaged between our hip control and the mid twist. So we'll select its IK goal and apply a float expression controller. All right, so this is going to be hip CTRL for the first variable. Choose create. The next, again, is going to be mid SWV. Again, create. And then we can use our assign controllers to assign what we need to. So I'll assign the swivel angle to the mid SWV, and for the hip controller, we'll go ahead and find that, collapse the chest. Here's the hip, and get right to its rotation X. From there, we can go ahead and, again, type in our expression. So that's hip CTRL plus mid swiv and divide by 2. Let's see what we can end up with. So we now take this hip control and rotate it. There we have it. This twist is looking wonderful. Wait till you see it all enveloped. This is going to be great. So this is what I was really excited to bring to you, because it's really going to help out with the deformations in the spine by maintaining that twist distribution. Great. All right, well, that pretty much finishes up our spine. What we can do from here is go ahead and open up Manage Layers. I'll go ahead and hide the control objects and also objects to hide so we can see what else we need to add to these layers. Alright, so we know we need to add the upper body controls to the control objects layer, so we'll go ahead and add that. We know we need to take the helper for the center of gravity and add that to objects to hide, so we'll do that. Okay, and the bones for the spine are already added to their layer. Alright, so we've pretty much finished our upper body setup. What's next to do is actually to create a global control, which we'll do in the next lesson.